Hello, my name is Enrique Santana, and this is my presentation on the Think-Aloud activity. This one specifically is going to be on collision forces. Collision forces, let's give you some introduction and context. This is the Unit 1 on Science Middle School for 8th grade. The unit is called Contact Forces. It comes from the curriculum on OpenSciEd. This would be the last lesson on the unit with direct instruction is being presented a project to design a protective gear in this lesson. The lesson starts by reviewing an article about helmets read in the previous lesson, uh, bicycle helmets. Now let's give you some introduction on the project we are introducing to the kids. Um, Students will have a week to design a successful protective device, such as, for example, an egg or a snow globe. They're gonna need to drop it from shoulder height. On that time, we'll work on improving the design for such successful device. Understanding and designing such device helps students understand the importance of protected devices as a whole, and also give them a glance into the design world as a career choice. Also, it complies with the standard AMS PS2-1, which is the third Newton's law about every action have the equal opposite reaction. From this lesson on, students will have five more lessons to work on their design. They are going to be studying different protective materials to choose the correct one for their particular project, and they will be receiving peer feedback and my feedback as a teacher on their designs. So they're working on so, practically improving little by little their designs. Now, the think aloud part of the activity, the introduction. The think aloud will focus on explaining the concepts of constraints and criteria in the context specifically for the project as a baseline for their initial designs once they get the project. Criteria and constraints are new words in students' vocabulary. So I will model how to identify and consider these factors in the design process. How to get to an engagement is by asking questions. I mean, I'm going to be modeling the think aloud. I'm going to put criteria, constraints. Uh, going to start thinking aloud. What are criteria? I'm going to explain them. What are my constraints? I'm going to explain them. Then I'm going to ask questions like, I don't know, for example, what do you think is the most important criterion for this device? Or, I'm sorry, can anyone identify a constraint we haven't considered yet? Trying to find some participation from the students. Now let's dig a little bit deeper in what is a criteria and constraints in this uh, specific project that we're talking about. The definition of criteria would be requirements or standards that the design must meet to be considered successful. One example of one criterion that we could follow is it must keep a neck intact when dropped from shoulder height. That is one example, but it depends. Obviously, it's going to be different for each project. One constraint that I'm giving them, it needs to be dropped from shoulder side. Now, the definition of constraints are the limitations of restriction within which the design must operate. One example, as I said, was it must be dropped from shoulder height. Another one was be must not exceed a $10 budget, considering that we are working on the city school district. We need to be inclusive. We also have some materials for the students, but that's one constraint that we are putting some budget limitations. Also on real life, when we're thinking on device, we're thinking also on costs. and it has to be cost effective. Understanding both of them is vital for the success of your design because they are the baseline. Criteria serve as your roadmap, it's not your goals, but it's more specific um, to know where you want to get. Constraints are, on the other hand, your boundaries, where not to get, what are your limits. That is what I'm going to try to model for the students, what I'm going to explain to them. As a closing thoughts for this particular activity, the whole project complies with the highest levels of Bloom taxonomy, which is designing a project. As I mentioned before, it also complies with one specific standard, but it complies with more standards from new generation standards. And to achieve a successful device, students will have 5 more lessons, a whole week of progressive research and feedback. So they're going to be progressively improving their designs and tweaking their designs. But the first part of the whole project is understanding what criteria and constraints are for their designs. From there, they're gonna start building their successful design. And that's why we are modeling the Think Aloud. So coming back to the part of how actually I would do the Think Aloud activity, this would be basically the T-shirt that I would do. I gotta say, the way I'm thinking doing it is going to be on a real old style whiteboard, in which I'm going to write down my thinking as I go, uh, projecting it for students. So I will do a T-shirt that they going to redo on their notebooks. I will title the T-shirt "Designing a Protected Device Project" with criteria and constraints. Like I'm going to be writing here using the text pad again because I'm planning to do this on a whiteboard, a regular whiteboard. I will be doing it writing. But the device must be protected, must protect the egg. In my case, I'm thinking I'm going to drop an egg from shoulder height. So my first criteria that I need to follow is that my device needs to protect the egg. So needs to protect the egg from shoulder height. And that would be my first criteria. But then I also need to add more criteria to that. I mean, how I'm going to accomplish that first most important criteria. Maybe I'm going to need to diminish the peak forces during the collision. And if I think, okay, what are the peak forces? What am I talking about? I'm just talking about cushion material. The cushion material could be different depending if I want to protect an egg or a glass of water or snow globe, and depending of my particular design. In this case, I'm just going to write down that I'm going to need cushion material. That cushion material is going to decrease the peak forces during the impact, as we saw before on the experiments. So that's another criterion that we are going to add into my chart. Um, then I'm going to add another criteria. The third criteria, maybe I'm going to do a glass of water, maybe not an egg, but a glass of water, and I can accept certain really small amount of damage. Let's say if it's an egg, I can accept a small crack, or I'm sorry for the noise, or maybe it's a glass. I can accept a really small chip on the glass. So let's just write my protected device can accept just a small amount of damage. That is my criteria. Your criteria can be different. Okay. My criteria, I'm willing to accept a really small amount of damage. Uh, if your criteria wants to be different and you don't want to accept any kind of damage, That's perfectly fine. Every single device is going to be different. I don't know. Do you have any other criteria that you would like to add, to yourself in your own notebook? And this will be the part that I'm looking for feedback from students, and I'm looking for their engagement and participation. Then we will go to the constraints. The constraints that I'm looking for are my limits. I need to be within those limits on constraints. For example, my main first constraint that I'm going to put is time, because I have 1 week. So I need to present my project in 1 week time. That is my main concern. My main constraint is going to be time. Time-wise, I have 5 days plus a weekend to present my device and to finish my project. My other constraint that I can present, that I can write down, is going to be money. So my device needs to fit within a $10 budget. I can add more stuff that regularly I can provide here in the classroom, or you can get at your home, but it should not be more than a $10 budget. Another constraint that I can think right now is weight, because I need to carry from home to school. So if you do something that weighs more than yourself to protect something that is going to fall, you're not going to bring it, right? I'm not going to bring it. I wouldn't bring it if it's too heavy. So that is going to be one of my constraints. There's another constraint that you want to add. I mean, I can come up with more constraints and with more criteria that we can add to our project. And the more constraint and criteria we add, the more aligned the project will be. We will have time during this week to add more criterion and more constraints to our project. And basically, this is pretty much how I do plan to do this presentation.